Congresswoman, welcome to the show. It's good to have you this evening. All right, it's crazy to think that years later, we still don't know about the origin of COVID-19. Biden started out his administration with an investigation, but ultimately that went nowhere. So talk to me about what this subcommittee is doing. Are you picking up on that investigation? What's the goal?
So certainly the Biden administration did listen to some of the public clamor about origins of COVID-19. This is not a partisan issue, but really what the FBI did was over that 90 days, just look at all the documents that they already had. So they really didn't do any thorough investigation. We had a hearing. The Republicans had a hearing on origins of COVID-19. There's some very important information. And let me just simplify for your audience, why is it important that we know the origins of COVID-19? One, because the Chinese Communist Party at the Wuhan Institute of Virology was doing biosafety lab 4 research in a biosafety lab 2. So biosafety is very important, and it's an international standard. Number 2, countries are supposed to disclose if there's a virus or a bacteria that they think can lead to a pandemic, and that disclosure is supposed to come within 24 hours. So disclosure is very important so other countries can prepare in order to mitigate any damage to that country. And then number 3, gain-of-function research. We know that there was gain-of-function research. I think there is plenty of evidence to show that that in fact existed. We will bring that up within the select subcommittee. And then, the international community and the World Health Organization should be having a say whether gain-of-function research should be done. And certainly when it comes to U.S. dollars shouldn't be, funneled through the NIH to EcoHealth to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So those are 3 very good reasons why it's important to know the origins of COVID-19. And we don't want to only look at the origins of COVID-19. That in itself is important. But remember, how we responded to this pandemic sets the precedent. That's how government works. I was in the military. I was director of the State Department of Public Health. I don't think that this should be the precedent for how we handle the next pandemic. Lockdowns, mandating vaccines, mandating masks, all of those things need to be thoroughly researched and brought to the forefront in a nonpartisan, objective, scientific way so we know how to address and set precedent for the next pandemic.
Sounds exciting. I know people are glad to hear it. Let me ask you this, though, because one of the problems before with the investigation that Biden put into place is that China would not cooperate, even under the World Health Organization. So how do you plan on getting that information ultimately?
Well, we may not be able to go into the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that information may have in fact been destroyed. But there are other things that point to the fact that this probably was a lab leak. So there's a certain site within the COVID-19 virus called a furin cleavage site. And I know this is really technical. And there's also certain sequencing of amino acids that point to more it to be man-made than it to be zoologic or occurring from a bat in a cave 600 miles away from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I think there are ways that we can have the expert witnesses testify scientifically what's the likelihood that this emerged naturally in nature, or did it come, is it more likely to have come from a lab leak? And then that brings up the other issues I talked about, which is disclosure, laboratory safety, and then what kind of research is ethical to be done throughout the globe.
So I want to talk about, before we go, EcoHealth Alliance, which is actually the nonprofit group that tried to get Dr. Fauci to downplay that it was a lab leak. Comes to find out that they are actually receiving federal funding to do coronavirus or to do research on bats there in China. And now we're finding out they've actually got $3 million more of taxpayer money. Is this something you guys are specifically reaching? Why this EcoHealth Alliance is still getting taxpayer money? Only have about a minute left.
Absolutely. That's one of the things you can do with oversight and investigations, and that's to look at funding streams and where those grants go and who makes decisions for grants or loans that the federal government gives out. So absolutely, that's one of the things we can do and we will do. All of us are very interested in extending what Senator Rand Paul discussed with Dr. Fauci when he had a hearing and testified to the Senate.
All right, Congresswoman Miller-Meeks, thanks for being here. Have a lot more to talk with you. Hope to have you back soon.
Thank you.